Are you planning a 12 to 14-day itinerary in New Zealand's South Island, but the more research you do, the more confused you get? Milford Sound, Franz, Josef, Queenstown, they all look amazing, but how do you actually connect them without spending half your holiday driving? In this video, I'll show you a proven 12-day South Island itinerary starting in Christchurch and finishing in Queenstown. So here's your 12-day South Island loop as an overview. Day 1, arrive in Christchurch one night. Day 2, travel Christchurch to the west coast to Punakaiki one night. Day 3, Punakaiki to Franz Josef, stay 2 nights. Day 4, explore the Franz Josef area. Day 5, travel Franz Josef to Wanaka via 𝗧𝗿𝗃𝗀𝗃 and stay 2 nights in Wanaka. Day 6, explore the Wanaka and Central Otago region. Day 7, travel from Wanaka to 𝗬𝗏𝗹𝗆𝗀𝗆, stay 2 nights. Day 8, day trip to Milford Sound. Day 9, 𝗬𝗏 to Queenstown and spend 3 nights here. Day 10 and 11, explore the Queenstown, Arrowtown and 𝗬𝗏𝗄𝗃 area. Day 12, depart Queenstown either with domestic or international flight. So you arrive into Christchurch either with an international flight or through Auckland. Just note there are a number of airlines flying directly to Christchurch, like Singapore Airlines, Emirates, Qatar Airline, as well as United during the summertime from San Francisco. So I recommend to get a transfer, especially with long-haul flights from the airport, which is only about 15 minutes away from the city center, and then you stay the first night. My suggestion is to stay pretty central here in central Christchurch. There's some lovely places not far away from the botanical gardens, from 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗃𝗀𝗃 Park, so you can go for a walk. So you would have 1 night in Christchurch the first night. I already made a dedicated video on Christchurch. You want to check out the link in the playlist in the description box below to learn more what you can actually do on that day. So on the second day, you pick up a rental car in Christchurch, and then you have 2 options actually to travel over to the west coast to Punakaiki. As you can see, Google states around about 4 hours, 300 kilometers, but you always have to add a little bit more, like 10 to 15% to the Google time. So more like 4.5 or even 5 hours if you take it really nice and slow. So this is the one option you can do with a rental car. The key advantage with going with a rental car is you can stop at all these beautiful places like Castle Hill. There's a beautiful walk around. Again, I've done a video on that. I don't want to go into too much details, but this is a stunning scenery. You're actually going from the eastern side, from the east coast side, over the Southern Alps, which run throughout the South Island here, and then you hit basically the lush green rainforest of the west coast here once you pass 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗀𝗃. So that's one option, to go with a rental car from Christchurch to Punakaiki. So the second option is actually going with a train. There is the famous Transalpine train from Christchurch over to 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗀𝗃, runs once a day and pretty much goes along the main road, except from Springfields onwards. You can see this little line here, the dotted line, goes into the countryside and really goes through some of stunning areas here, through 𝗥𝗏𝗃𝗀𝗃, and then it actually connects again at 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗃, and they will actually stop with the train in 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗃, and you have about 20 minutes or so, and then it goes through the Otira tunnel into the west coast area. And normally you would depart about 8:15 in the morning in Christchurch, and you would arrive in 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗀𝗃 around about 1:30. And from 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗃 you can actually pick up your rental car and continue your journey. So this is actually a cool way to do a combination between rental car and train. I've done another video on that as well. So from 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗀𝗃 up to Punakaiki, it's only around about an hour's drive. You can download my free travel planning sheet in the description box below. It has accommodation suggestions, driving distances, tour and transport links. Plus, there's a ChatGPT travel planning prompt you can use to personalize your itinerary further. So either you go with a rental car or with a train. In any case, you would arrive around about 3, maybe 4 o'clock into Punakaiki. And here's a couple of options what you could do in this afternoon. So you can either go to the Pancake Rocks, which are obviously very famous here, but there's also a couple of really cool walks, especially the Pororari River Track, which is on the northern end of Punakaiki. So these are kind of like a couple of things you can do. There's also another Punakaiki swing bridge track in the southern area. So there's plenty to do, little walks. It's just a beautiful little area. So you would stay one night here in this area. But if you have a little bit more time and you want to kind of travel in a more relaxed way, I would highly recommend to go up to 𝗥𝗶𝗹𝗁𝗏. This is further to the north. There's a seal colony, there's a lighthouse, there is a coastal walkway, beautiful up here. So if you have a little bit more time, I would highly encourage you to have a couple of nights here in Punakaiki. In Charleston is also famous for the Charleston caves, a couple of ducks here, and we have also the Paparoa National Park here right in the back of Punakaiki. Here it is. In my day job as a travel planner, one thing I always tell my clients: plan to stay a minimum of 2 nights as much as possible at key locations. It will make all the difference. With 2 nights, you can actually experience a place and not just rush through. Right, on day 3, you're heading south again. So you're passing Greymouth, but there's so much to do along the way. Shantytown is one option. It's a kind of a historic village. There's a bit of gold panning going on. The West Coast used to be a famous gold mining area. It's also a lot of greenstone here. You can stop, or I would recommend to stop, in 𝗥𝗏𝗃𝗃. There is the museum, which is lovely. A lot of history here, a lot of history with gold mining in the 1860s. It's an underpopulated area, so there's not a lot of settlement happened in these days. So you continue further south. If you have time, if the weather is nice, you could head over to Lake Canary. There's also the famous 𝗥𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗯𝗏 down here. It's a wonderful area. There's also a helicopter flight I really love with precision helicopters. This is one of the most amazing helicopter flights, just by the, just as a side note here. But basically you would continue further south. Ross, there's some gold mining fields, so pop in here. Then it gets really, really isolated. You traveling through Pukekohe, which is basically, it's a couple of houses there. So you have to visualize this is really underpopulated, so you want to be a little bit prepared, especially with fuel. There's no fuel station or no supermarket in Punakaiki. Just forgotten to mention that, but more or less heading further south to Franz Josef with stops along the way, and you would have 2 nights in Franz Josef to explore that area. One thing I've forgotten the previous day is actually here when you drive towards Franz Josef. In Wataroa, there is a white heron colony. They're very rare birds. You can do tours between September and February when they're actually breeding in the 𝗥𝗏𝗃𝗃 Lagoon. But let's have a look into Franz Josef. So Franz Josef is really a tourism hub here on the West Coast. Most people would come here to go up to the glacier, the Franz Josef Glacier, do a helicopter flight or do a walk in the valley. Note, if you want to get onto the ice, you need to do a helicopter flight, either flying only, or you can do a so-called heli hike. I got more details in my playlists below. There's also a few walks, as you can see, the Roberts track, and all sorts of different levels. You can go for 5 minutes or for 5 hours. So there's lots. I've done a video on Franz Josef as well. There's lots. But one thing I would kind of encourage you, if you have 2 nights, heading into 𝗥𝗏𝗃𝗃 Lagoon. This is a lovely village. There's a walk here along the coastline. There's also a kayak operator, which actually goes into the lagoon, into that kind of network of little creeks and rare birds in there, really off the beaten in a way. And if you're into kind of a little bit lesser known and more remote places, highly encourage you to head down. Also, the weather conditions are often very different here in 𝗥𝗏𝗃𝗃 than they are in Franz Josef. It's only about 25-30 kilometers away, so highly recommended. If you find this video helpful, please hit the subscribe button below to stay in touch for more helpful travel videos to come. Also, please tick that little like button as it helps our channel to grow. Thank you very much. So on day 5, you traveling further south from Franz Josef down to Wanaka. You need to expect around about 5 hours drive if you take it kind of, slowly, and which I would highly encourage because it's one of the most stunning drives here. So first you head over to 𝗤𝗏𝗃𝗃 Glacier. There's a couple of hills here that takes a bit longer. It looks very close, but it takes longer than you think. And here in 𝗤𝗏𝗃𝗃 Glacier, if you wanted to, you could do the Lake Madsen walk. This is a famous mirror lake reflecting Mount Cook and Mount Tasman. But generally, I would suggest to continue, and because there are lots of stops along the way. Let's go through them in detail. You come through here, you come down to Bruce Bay, and there's a lovely site directly on the beach. So I encourage you to have a stop here. It's a very rugged area. So I had somebody talking the other day regarding swimming here. I would not recommend to swim here. These West Coast beaches are very dangerous. So you can have a look, but just, take it easy. Lake Paringa is a lovely site too. It's a lovely lake here on the western side. Has a little picnic area, has toilet facilities, which is handy. Again, there's no major township between Franz Josef and Wanaka. So you need to keep that in mind. There's a petrol station in Haast. That's pretty much all. But forgotten to mention that I will put a link to that Google map in the description box below so you can actually follow that trip along. Just out of interest, what is your biggest worry when planning a trip like this? Is it the driving distances, the accommodation options, or just figuring out where to go? Drop me your thoughts in the comments box below. Continue south. If you're really keen to see something special, there's a really cool walk, the Monroe Beach Walk, which is just where Lake 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 is. It's stunning, honestly, but you need to calculate an hour or two. But you could also just go in there. It's lovely bush, native bush, New Zealand. So then you continue south. Knights Point is a beautiful viewpoint, very scenic, a bit of windy road here, but generally good driving. Then a must stop is here, Ship Creek. Again, I've done another video. I don't want to go into much detail, otherwise this video would be far too long. I mean, I want to focus here on the itinerary as such. So you continue through Haast. Again, there's a little village. You could get some fuel here, but I would not risk it. I mean, if the petrol station is closed, you're kind of stuck. So be prepared, fuel up from Franz Josef or 𝗤𝗏𝗃𝗃. Then continue here, the Haast River, gorgeous area, absolutely stunning. So what's happening here is you pass through the Haast Pass and you actually go into the central Otago region. So on the left side here, left of the Southern Alps, we have the lush green forest, the rainforest. Here on the eastern side of the Southern Alps, we have the dry countryside, tussock land side without trees, more or less. So, and then you drive over the neck here. That's a famous little spot. Again, you want to stop here. There's a lookout heading, gorgeous, totally different scenery as you can just see from these little pictures here. And then you basically roll in. Lake 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 is another great one. You have points to stop here all the way, so make it really a full day trip and take your time so you don't need to arrive before 4 or 5 o'clock, which is great. Into Wanaka. Wanaka is a lovely kind of village. Base yourself around the center somewhere and have 2 nights in Wanaka to explore that area. So day 6, you have a full day in Wanaka and you really need it. I've done another video on activities in Wanaka, but just a quick look what you could do. There's a little place called 𝗬𝗏𝗀𝗄𝗃 Island. You can actually go there with a tour with a water taxi, which is a half-day trip, so that is really recommendable. Or you could actually head into the Mount Aspiring National Park. There's obviously the famous Rob Roy walk here up here. That's around about a good hour's drive heading there. There's also guided tours you can join, drive in there on a guided walk. There's also heaps of beautiful vineyards around, so if you're into food and wine, so that's just the top level information on what you can do in and around Wanaka for that full day. So again, I've done a video on that. All right, so now then on the next day, day 7, I believe it is, you have a drive heading through Queenstown to Anau. So you have 2 options here. You can either go through the Cardrona Drive here, which is marked here. This is New Zealand's highest road access for normal vehicles. So it's about 1,250 meters high or so. So on a beautiful day, I would absolutely recommend that to go through. If the day is kind of average, go through here, go through Cromwell, which is also a beautiful place. Keep in mind, Cromwell, if you like a little bit more remote, if you want to stay away from larger places like Wanaka or Queenstown, Cromwell is actually my favorite to stay. It has a number of beautiful cottage accommodation, a couple of lodges, so that's maybe something, and you could explore here the whole area. There's also the Otago Rail Trail. You might have heard about it in this area. They do the trips mainly from Clyde. Also, there's some accommodation in Clyde. So if you're into cycling, that is maybe something you want to consider. But otherwise, let's continue for the sake of this itinerary. Otherwise, this video gets far too long. Let's head into Fiordland. Stay with me, because coming up, I'm going to tell you one of the most underrated stops in the Fiordland region that most people drive straight past. So you have to calculate around about 3.5 hour drive. Maybe a little bit long, maybe 4, if you take it really slowly from Wanaka to Anau. So when you arrive in Anau, you would have 2 nights in Anau, absolutely. But what you can do in the afternoon, so skip Queenstown at the moment because you get back to Queenstown. I would suggest to do a couple of walks here, either going up down here. It's called Rainbow Reach Bridge. That's right here. That's the easiest access to the Fiordland National Park, and it's absolutely beautiful. I love that kind of walk. You can walk either 5 minutes, a couple of hours. You can go right to Lake Manapouri, which is here on the left side. So that is obviously an option. And go to the left. Once you cross the bridge, go to the left. That is the most beautiful part. By the way, they actually done some filming for the Lord of the Ring here as well. So Lord of the Ring fans, watch out. So yeah, so that would be the afternoon. In the evening, if you want something interesting, you can do the Anau Caves tour. So the caves are basically on the other side of the lake, over here, around about here. They take a boat ride over there, and then you do the trip. It's around about 2.5 or 3 hours. They do it in the evening as well, to 8 o'clock. So you could easily maybe even fit it in after dinner. So let's have a look at the next full day heading into Milford Sound. As you can see, there are a number of stops here, the Mirror Lakes, etc. So one key recommendation I have: do a guided tour from Anau and not drive yourself, because you get so much more information heading in to the Fiordland National Park, the local history, the walks. They will stop along the way. I got some links in the description box below, as well as on the planning sheet you can download. So there's all these good links. You can check out details on the stay trip. They will stop at places like Lake Gunn. They will do the lookouts. They will do the Mirror Lakes, and they basically get you on time into Milford Sound. There's also the Hammer Tunnel which is an iconic kind of place. It's quite a dark place, so some self-drivers have a little bit of a worry with that. So you head into Milford Sound, and you can do either two trips. I would recommend either just go plainly for the cruise, which is going out into the fjord, depending on the weather conditions, either right out to the sea or just in the middle part. There's some spectacular waterfalls. You've probably seen them. I don't need to mention all that. But here, the other option is actually going on the Milford track. Here is the Milford track, which is normally a 4-day trip, but you can also do it as a day trip. So what they really do is they go with a water taxi from the wharf into that place called Sandfly Point, and from there they basically walk with a guided walk onto the track. It's a stunning thing. You normally do it in the morning, like 3 hours. It's very easy walking, and then in the afternoon you would do the cruise in the fjord. So that would be a full day heading into Milford Sound. By the way, have you considered spending a night in Milford Sound instead of doing a day trip? I've done the overnight cruise, and it's a completely different experience. When the day trippers leave around 4 p.m, the place becomes incredibly peaceful. It's an option worth exploring. I'll put the link in the description box below. As an alternative, some people would want to do maybe even 𝗪𝗆𝗆𝗀𝗆 Sound, which is over here. It's a longer trip. You have to go through Lake Manapouri over into 𝗪𝗆𝗆𝗀𝗆 Sound. But I've done a video on that again, either Milford Sound or 𝗪𝗆𝗆𝗀𝗆 Sound, whatever choice is best for you. So you can check that out in the link in the description box below. On day 9, you're actually heading back to Queenstown. The drive from Anau to Queenstown is only about good 2 hours, so you could even spend a bit of time in Anau in the morning and before you head over. You would have, with this plan, you have 3 nights in Queenstown. So there's lots to do in Queenstown, but if you want allocate maybe one night like Punakaiki or another place, or even another day in Anau, you could do that. So there's slight variations with that itinerary. It all depends on time, obviously. So Queenstown is the tourism capital of New Zealand. Lots to do, from jet over jet to bungee jump to fine dining. There are beautiful vineyards here outside around about Lake Hayes area. Beautiful accommodation. I personally suggest staying in Aerotown, especially for people which like a little bit more quiet kind of a place. Central Queenstown is pretty much party central. There's a lot of bars. It's a bit more noisy, a bit more traffic, obviously, but it's still beautiful. So the other thing I would suggest, I mean, there's golf playing. There's a few really famous golf courses for people interested in that. But the other thing is you could actually go into 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. It's again an hour's drive here going up to the 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃 area. So this is famous for the Dart River area. That's where the Dart River Safari starts, and heading into that 𝗪𝗇𝗏𝗏𝗏 National Park. Plus you have up here the Routeman track. You can see here the dotted line. Here it is. So basically the Routeman track is a connection between the 𝗪𝗇𝗏𝗏𝗏 National Park and here the Fjordland National Park. So you would have kind of passed it here on the Milford Road. It's basically the other side of the Routeman track. So you can easily actually do the Routeman track as a little day walk. You could head up there. There's also Lord of the Ring tours. So there's plenty to do in the Queenstown area. And from Queenstown, there's an international airport, so you can depart here either back to Auckland or to Christchurch, or you can even fly internationally to Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne. So they're really, it's a good connection if you want to make the most out of your time and combine New Zealand with Australia in your travel itinerary. So here you have it, a 12-day South Island New Zealand itinerary, start to finish, from Christchurch to Queenstown. No guesswork, just a route that works. You can download my free travel planning sheet in the description box below. It has accommodation suggestions, driving distances, tour links and transport links. Plus, there's a ChatGPT travel planning prompt you can use to personalize your itinerary further. Thanks very much for watching. See you in the next video.